it's almost better to let the algorithm figure it out, because if you start putting exclusions in early, it's not actually training the pixel. You're kind of beholden to those exclusions going forward. Whereas if the pixel doesn't see the conversions firing out of California, it'll slowly start to optimize away from that. So yeah, it's been a big hit. Just some quick metrics with one of our clients. I think June we were spending probably 8% of our spend for USA campaign was going through it, 2.5 times ROAS. As soon as July hit, that went to 0.67 ROAS, so really big hit. But the interesting part about that is as the months kind of progressed, that 8% of spend has kind of dialed back down to about 2% in terms of a mix. So, that goes to show that the algorithm is working as it should to some degree and kind of making up for it.
Right, one more time. One more time.
I knew you saw it too.
We just recorded a brilliant piece that the world may never hear that wasn't recorded. That was my bad. We're having an interesting Friday this week. It is all killer, no filler. We are Pilothouse. This is DTC, our podcast, our content brand. We just launched our newsletter. We're super excited about it. You got to subscribe to directtoconsumer.co. You got to understand that these insights are going to be fueled by the Pilothouse team, as well as by all the amazing brands that we interview on this podcast. So go to directtoconsumer.co right now and sign up for our free newsletter. You're going to love it. Welcome to All Killer No Filler, guys. Let's just have one more conversation about this interesting bit of news we found out today about how Tai Lopez bought Pier One Imports, a legacy furniture brand, for $31 million as it's going into receivership. Kyle, bring up your point again, because I thought it was a good one about maybe what they're doing here, because I have something to add.
Well, there's a couple thoughts I had. One, start at the highest level, like, does that deal include property? Because that would make a lot more sense. But also in addition, like, I haven't heard Tai Lopez in a little bit, or, he's not out there like he was back in the day, selling books next to Lambos. But I wonder if this is just a branding play to kind of, put him back at the top of the news cycles.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I liked your idea too, that it's potentially he just looked at the inventory and knew that in some sort of like phoenix from the ashes, he might be able to like make his costs back of
totally. He might just be able to take that inventory and put it right on Wayfair and call it a day. Like,
he's got liquidators on standby.
I don't think he actually got the inventory, guys. I don't think.
Really?
I could be wrong, but he also, it looks like they bought Dress Barn, which was like another company. Unless I'm completely out.
No, they did. They were talking about that on My First Million as well. I met some guys who were making a mint with e-commerce, and this is pretty sketchy, so we don't recommend this in any way. But I met multiple people who would just run store going out of business ads like all the time. They just buy brands, and then they'd run store going out of business ads in perpetuity, because people just always want to feel like they're getting a deal. And if you could lower your acquisition costs by using that sort of angle, it works for some people. I don't know if he'd be thrilled that I'm giving out his tip here.
I think also if you're buying, if you're buying a brand that has done billions of dollars in sales for $30 million, and you just switch it to e-com, where all the baby boomers are going because of COVID. I mean, I think there's actually a smart business play here, which is just like get the assets, get the brands for pennies on the dollar, switch it to direct to consumer, and like the world's your oyster.
I love it. I also, as someone in the info space, I get targeted all the time by different info products. And the one that I keep seeing lately is this guy that's literally just talking about boomer businesses in general. Like not even just, not necessarily turning them into online businesses, but actually just there's this whole generation of business people that have been running successful, profitable businesses for years. And they're just looking for ways to retire into the sunset kind of thing. And so there's this massive market opportunity to be taking these businesses off people's hands, even before you factor in the fact that, us millennials could, turn it into a really going concern with our digital tactics or whatever. It's a really great opportunity.
Totally. Yeah. Like accounting firms is huge retirement populations. There's laundromats. There's so many kind of brick and mortar things that, won't die, with the rise of online. Well, accounting actually, who knows?
They're gonna start buying Amazon stores soon enough, eh?
Yeah.
There you go.
Just
But on the is the big play getting the data, getting the customer list? It's like one of the best demographics out there for e-com, for anything really. Pier one buyers. If you have a list, that would absolutely crush.
Yeah,
absolutely. And just having a brand people trust, right? I mean, that's just it. Like you're buying billions of dollars worth of successful transactions.
All right, guys, we're gonna pivot.
Yeah, speaking of data.
Let's buy Walmart.
But speaking of data, let's talk about one of the things we're doing is getting feedback from our audience. We get some questions kind of coming in here. So we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what people are asking. One of the big questions on everyone's mind this week, obviously, is CCPA. We did a little piece of it in our newsletter. But I'm curious, just from the front lines of your actual campaigns, what are we seeing with CCPA and its impact, and what are we doing about it?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So we saw basically on July 1st, performance really started to slide on a couple of our lead gen clients. And we started digging into the data, and it was pretty obvious that California was just like gone. It just got like blown off the map. So like it was in a lot of a lot of our clients, it was the biggest state. Not massive, but let's say 7 or 8% of spend. I mean, that's pretty big. And then all of a sudden, we'd go from getting $20 leads to $400 leads. Overnight.
Is that like globally, like US wide, I suppose, but like mathematically that doesn't make sense, right? Like 7% your CPA shouldn't spike that high. Like, why do you think that happened?
Well, no, CPA didn't spike everywhere. CPA for California. Sorry, I didn't explain that properly. The CPA for California went from $20 to $400. Basically, we're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on there. We've seen pretty big success just launching brand new, like, run of country minus California campaigns. That's made a big difference in terms of us getting back on track quickly. We're also looking into server to server to post back conversions from Facebook, opposed to like you actually using their post back opposed to using their pixel.
Right.
We'll see. I'll have more to report on that next week, I'm sure, once we actually get a little further. But.
I haven't read too deeply on that. I've kind of entrusted the people around me on this one. But is that a lot like GDPR when the European Union enforced those new rules, or Canada's Castle?
Exactly. So it's California decided to go on their own and create their own state level privacy laws, which have made a bunch of. It's basically the right to opt out of having your data collected, all that kind of stuff.
And you can request access for it and see the whole chain of events and all that stuff. To be fair, it's well overdue.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be interesting to see how Facebook deals with it and like what their game plan is. 'Cause I don't even think they properly know. There's a bunch of stuff out there, but there's no real. And I'll be honest, I have another guy on my team that's kind of he's taking lead on that, so I don't know the exact nuance of it, but it doesn't sound like they know exactly. They don't have a game plan like going right now.
The consensus is definitely that Facebook has no clue what they're doing with it, and also that they may have botched it. That being said, we've had some good conversations with our Facebook rep, super helpful, and kind of exposing as much as she can to us for it. Nothing too actionable other than kind of try and roll with the punches, and here's a few things to opt in if your clients are a bit sensitive about following this. But kind of on the campaign front, we've done some interesting tests similar to what Jeff's talking about, where we do some exclusions and inclusions. But I think one of the things that's happening is it's evolving. The pixel is kind of figuring it out, and what we've come to terms with is that it's almost better to let the algorithm figure it out, because if you start putting exclusions in early, it's not actually training the pixel. You're kind of beholden to those exclusions going forward. Whereas if the pixel doesn't see the conversions firing out of California, it'll slowly start to optimize away from that. So yeah, it's been a big hit. Just some quick metrics with one of our clients. I think June we were spending probably 8% of our spend for USA campaign was going through it 2.5 times ROAS. As soon as July hit, that went to 0.67 ROAS, so really big hit. But the interesting part about that is as the months kind of progressed, that 8% of spend has kind of dialed back down to about 2% in terms of mix. So, that goes to show that the algorithm is working as it should to some degree and kind of making up for it.
Is your ROAS still at 0.67? I can't remember what the number you said, but is it still 0.67 in California, or are you seeing it optimize to go back up even at 2% of spend? Or is it
no,
kind of a loss?
Yeah, those stats are just from yesterday, so that's yeah. But that's a really good point, Jeff, and I think something maybe for another podcast later is a follow-up on that, because I think that this will kind of bounce back, like very similarly to what we saw with GDPR. Mm-hmm. It's like a hit both on the algorithm side, because it doesn't know how to optimize properly. But there's still people in California that want to buy products. Like that's not changing, right?
I think your advice about keeping faith in the algorithm, even when something is going wrong, I think is a really valid one, because you want to stay in their dev cycle too. Because if they're putting fixes in to affect this, and you've already changed their access to your data, it could have a longer term effect than if you just would have stayed with the course. You know what I mean?
I totally do agree with that. I think there are some times though where we have, at least on my side, we've taken some, the Pixel gets some bad learnings. We have, when there was a Pixel outage a few months ago, I can't remember what it was. It just stopped converting for an entire day. And we let it go for a few days and it just would not come back. It was so far off. We were like 3 times CPA. And we ended up just launching a new Pixel, and like literally night and day, it was like back to better than it was prior. So like sometimes absolutely there are and especially depending on the amount of traffic you're sending through it, it's important to stick with it. But I think it's also, don't be shy, in my opinion, to fire something else up if time is of the essence. Also, just one thing totally unrelated, but I wish this was live because Shopify's checkout just went down and everyone's freaking out.
Yeah. Should we stop the podcast here?
I can connect it live right now. We can go live right now on Zoom.
Live, that's cool.
The team is definitely dealing with it, but yeah, pretty crazy. Instapage is down, so it might be an AWS thing or something as well.
What is going on? We've got that Twitter hack earlier last week. We've got this Shopify thing going down. What is going down, fellas? Well,
yeah,
we're not gonna that today.
Jeff, you mentioned, the outage on Facebook, a few months ago. I think there's been 4 or 5 since then. I think earlier this week there was one for 2 hours or 2 or 3 hours. So it's you got to roll with those punches, I guess. Decide whether you're gonna let the algorithm sort it out or go in there manually and try and hack your way out of it.
Yeah, totally.
Age-old concern. So speaking of hacking, one of the other questions that we had was about dynamic creatives and the role that we're seeing in our campaigns of dynamic creatives. I remember early on with dynamic creatives, part of the idea was that they were ideal for testing, in that you could take early audiences and test a bunch of different parameters, but that's not exactly what we're seeing. Andrew, can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing there with DCT?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, something that I think has changed over time. I think we started to build out a methodology where early in accounts, we would use DCTs to do our angle testing and very efficiently and quickly figure out what angles resonate with different products. And this worked on brand new accounts, brand new clients, as well as existing old scaling clients. And something feels like it's changed as of recently. Whenever we launch DCTs these days, for those purposes, we're seeing higher CPCs than prior. So it's turned into a more costly testing method. But the only caveat to that is it's still working on kind of warmer pixel accounts. And so we kind of shifted to middle of funnel testing and retargeting testing in terms of the creative front, rather than cold prospecting on cold pixels, basically. So that's just my quick observations, but I know Kyle's.
Yeah, I got a good example. So we really do a lot of DCT for early testing, angle testing, which creative is going to work well. Then we apply that to other bigger, broader prospecting efforts or retargeting or whatever. But launched a new product, completely cold, DCT, same structure we always use. It's in the health vertical, shit the bed. Couldn't even get like my angles out of it. It's now a little bit warm, maybe 100 purchases a month later. DCT crushing, like night and day, 1 month from launch through. So Andrew, I think like it is really interesting. I think kind of the Facebook, well, any ad platform, just the evolution of what's working and why is always moving on you. So yeah,
I think for the next podcast, we're testing some new methodologies when it comes to this early angle testing. So we can follow up with some different strategies there.
Are you guys using DCTs at scale? Like, are you like one thing we've seen is like we have a client we're spending like 20 grand a day on, and the dynamics just always get us the best CPA. We can't seem to beat it. But that client has also just recently taken a pretty big dip. So we're trying to figure out how to get that back. So maybe we need to get rid of those right now and see what else is in there.
That's a good point. Totally forgot that side of it. That's the other like major spot that we're using DCTs is just like instead of static creative, and they were built out for introducing new creative, but have done so well, similar to what Kyle's talking about, that we just keep pumping budget into it. And even when we take the winners out of it and build static ads, DCT still performs better. So yeah, it's really like changed in terms of its use as a tool. It's no longer really like proving out creative, and maybe it's just feeding campaigns hundreds of creatives, letting the algorithm, a warm pixel, find the right ad at the exact right spot for the right person, and that's why it scales so well.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see more and more stuff happen like that. I mean, there's no question Facebook wants to take over as much of the decision making as possible. So this is obviously a natural route, no question. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Eric's talking, but can't hear.
Good. Eric, it was not good. It really wasn't good. So I'm glad that it got cut out. No, that's fantastic. So that's DCTs. I think that's a really neat idea about how they've sort of inverted in how we think about how they're, about how to use them. And I think some really good insight as to why they work at scale, just being able to feed that algorithm with lots of different options. What about, so this is another question we had from people who subscribe to our newsletter at directtoconsumer.co. It's something that we hear all the time. And it's all about, we always know that he who can pay the most for a customer can win, which means you need to get your AOVs up, which means you need to have really strong upsell strategies. And so I was curious, like, what is a good benchmark for a good upsell take rate? I know when we look at advertisers' accounts, when we open them up, so few advertisers, even successful e-commerce advertisers, are really maximizing their upsell strategy. So I want to just take a minute and talk about our ideas for so let's start with what's a good benchmark for a good upsell take rate.
But I guess you just need to frame it, right? So there's different types of upsells, and there's different upsells in different parts of a flow, right? So like you'll have pre-cart order bumps, upsells, carousel options, add this to your order type thing. You have order bumps that are in cart, right? Like get expedited shipping for $7.99, get this additional PDF book that, changes your life, whatever it is. Then there's also post-purchase upsells. And so it really kind of depends on kind of where you're looking there, Eric. Is there a specific thing you want to talk about?
Just lead right into it. Like, let's talk about the first one.
Yeah, I mean, like I've seen accounts with, pre-cart order bump type stuff at like 50, 60, 70%. It really just comes down to value. If it's a variation, if it's a duplicate of the same product, like buy more, save more, Costco wholesale pricing. But I've seen that get up to like, 50, 60, 70% take. Lower price points obviously convert better, and, better copy obviously converts better. But the problem there,
Kyle, are you talking about order bumps, or are you talking about like?
I'm talking like a add this to your order.
Okay.
Scenario. But the challenge with those is that it's limited in the kind of sales copy, and so like the customer already kind of has to be familiar with the product. Like if it's a pair of socks, like obviously you're gonna get, if you like cats, like sure, why not get dog socks, whatever. They're 19 bucks. The conversion rate, or
So
whatever. I mean,
if you like cats, get the dog socks.
doesn't matter. But when you get into post-purchase upsells, it's kind of a whole different game, in that you have the credit card already on file, and you can just give a customer an option to buy after they've already transacted. And so the transaction flow is, really simple, really nice, really clean, really easy for the customer to do. And depending on the offer, or depending on the copy in that offer, you can get your first upsell take. A really strong, good, compliant upsell take is that's really strong is 40%. We average anywhere from 20 to 25% probably for take one, and there's following takes. It's 18% and like 6% for the third if we go that far.
It's on that first or upsell, post-purchase upsell. Or I guess all the upsells. It's all about clarity, right? Because that's really what's going to determine your uptake, and also therefore we're going to get to your customer service team and chargebacks, all that kind of stuff. So it's like it's a figuring that fine balance out between making sure you have added AOV and a good conversion rate on that upsell, but aren't like absolutely burying your customer service team or hurting your processing.
It's also just about providing value. I mean, doing it intelligently is giving the person an opportunity to save more on the same product, or find something that goes with that product. You don't need to like bash everything in there you can just to get your AOV up. I mean, it's still about making sure that whatever you're putting up there is in line with what you're selling, and that you're not going to have consumers being pissed off that they just bought something they didn't realize they bought or wanted to buy.
Totally. Like my favorite step one is just more of the same product for half the price. I mean, not every brand likes to discount like that, but that out of the gate, that'll probably land around 18% every time. There's a good example of a client we just on CartHook actually, and it's a health device. It's an actual device, but it's a single person use. And so we came up with this idea of buy one for your spouse, because they're going to want to use it when you're watching Netflix. And out of the gates, that came out pretty strong.
Love that.
It's just one upsell. It's super clean. It's another product. Free shipping included. Don't share it.
Post-purchase upsell?
Correct. Yeah.
And so what tool are we using for post-purchase upsells? Because that's not a native Shopify feature. No. So, I mean, we've been through them all. For the most part now, we're using CartHook as external tools. We also have an internal tool that does that. But we've, used one-click upsell, which is the Zipify guys. It does the trick. CartHook's a little bit more flexible. We've also used products like Connective and Limelight, which are more kind of intense, and you have to kind of do custom builds. So you have to kind of rebuild your store on top of those, but those are a lot more powerful, but still come with their own kind of flaws. Each of those platforms kind of has their own gaps, and it's depending on what you're trying to measure and how you're trying to make it work. It works kind of janky, but they'll get the job done.
and they each, you know, integrate with the payment processors in a different way too. So
Totally.
there's a lot of nuances there.
Yeah, that's another pain in the ass, right?
Yeah.
Like PayPal Pro, for example, doesn't work with CardHook, whereas it might work with some of the other guys.
But yesterday, CardHook released that PayPal integration, so now it works without having to get your account enabled.
Yeah, you don't need to, from a compliance perspective in PayPal, you don't need to get permission to do this type of upsell anymore. However, if it's a PayPal Pro account, it still won't work. It has to be like PayPal traditional business or express or whatever.
Yeah, Braintree, isn't that?
Yeah, Braintree is owned by PayPal. That does work, but it's a different deal than PayPal Pro. So lots of complications with each of these, and making it work with your store can be tricky.
One of the other things that's in this topic that I think is interesting, I think a lot of people want to know, is how to turn, like, when in that flow is it best to try to turn a single transaction into a subscription? Is that like is that something you do just after that first purchase, or is it after, you know, is it a period after that first purchase? What's our best tactic for that?
We like to do it on the, you know, on the sales page or the product page. So obviously very common, buy now, subscribe and save. However, unless it's a group of like if you're trying to push the AOV up, you're bundling products. And so subscription of like 5 units of something may not make sense. And so you kind of look over that and you go lower value and you try to build an LTV that way. So right from the gate, we kind of make it available. However, like we've also done things where you just on your cart, so your order bump actually is save 20% right now, click this button, subscribe. In Shopify, obviously there's like recharge, and that'll be kind of built into the cart. Depends on the platform that you're using.
It's very similar to like what Amazon's obviously doing, the subscribe and save.
Totally. And we're seeing success there too. Like that's an incredible tool. I'd love to get like Rob on and talk about Amazon a little bit someday also, because it's very fast. But also we've done things like on a one-click upsell. So you push them like, are you sure you don't want to subscribe? And you know, you write some code and discount the offer and push into a subscription, as opposed to their first order, which can do well.
Nice.
It's also a good post-purchase retargeting campaign, like on the ad side too. So you have a happy customer, month later, hit them up, you know, retargeting, you know, that you can subscribe, save this.
Totally. There's like, you know, a lot of people overlook this, but like this, like really going low on your entry price point to get, you know, your pixel warm and hot, get sales coming in. And then obviously email, SMS, all that stuff, but the retargeting strategies too, playing into, actually Stern, we just launched a campaign that had a higher price point on retargeting, and it's working better.
How does that work?
Yeah.
Why would it cost more on retargeting?
I don't know. It's crazy, but our AOV is way up. I just saw a note from Charlie, and I was like, how did you get the AOV up? And straight up, he's like, I just like added a third to the retargeting price.
Right. Yeah. I think it's about how you proposition the savings, right? Like, it's like, I think what it was like, buy more and save this much more. So it's way up there, but like to the customer, they're like, oh, now this is intriguing because look at all this extra value I'm getting, you know, versus, you know, okay value on the first offer. Right?
And they're familiar with the brand. There's more trust. I mean, it does make sense. Right?
I like it. That's awesome.
Lots of tactics.
These tactics. The other tactic I wanted to talk about today were the value-based lookalikes and the ABC lookalikes that Facebook announced, I guess, last week. Andrew, I know that it's something that we've been kind of already doing this. We've already been hacking ABC lookalikes using UTMs. Have we tested the new ABC lookalikes versus our old hacked UTM system?
Yeah, just on ABCs, basically, you know, we were using UTM, dynamic UTMs, and then building audiences based on those in the back end, and then you can build lookalikes. So it's basically, you know, lookalikes off of ad sets and campaigns. Facebook, I think, has recognized that a lot of people are doing that, so they're building that natively into their platform. It is still in beta, and we haven't tested it. We've done the old method, but today we actually got enabled on our account. So we're super excited to try it out and test it, and can report back. In terms of, what was the other one? Value-based?
Yeah.
Value-based has actually been around for quite a while. So that's basically uploading your customer list with LTV or AOV, preferably LTV, and it takes that into account as it's building lookalikes on your most valuable customer and your least valuable, still putting some weight behind that, but it will build a lookalike based on how it perceives that data. And we have tested that, and it works fantastically.
As you'd think it would. What's the thinking? LTV, obviously the value-based and LTV, that makes perfect sense. What's the thinking that goes into why ABC lookalikes work, or why these ad set specific lookalikes work?
Well, I mean, I think the concept is, as Facebook marketers, any one of us here, you have one campaign that's absolutely cranking. Its audience is the same as another campaign that's doing okay. Ads are the same, maybe, the variables, it's hard to determine why one's winning versus the other, but it's the theory is that it has targeted in to an audience that is of high value and really converting with your product and your proposition. And so rather than trying to dissect and recreate and figure all that out, just take that exact audience and throw it into a lookalike. Instead of just your purchasers or just your other high value event lookalikes. This is specifically to one ad set or one campaign that just happens to have hit the right audience. So it makes a lot of sense. I kind of wish it didn't. I wish that Facebook was easier to recreate your winners, using the same ingredients, but there's the black box of the Facebook pixel and algorithm on the back end that we don't have access to, and this in a way is kind of unlocking some of that. So it's super exciting.
I think it's pretty.
It gives you the retroactive granularity, right? So instead of you can't once you figure out what's working, you can't split it apart once you've already collected the data. So by collecting the data from the get-go with UTMs or with the ABCs, it allows you to kind of make those decisions later.
It's got to be rewarding as a pioneering marketer when you see Facebook realizing that you're using their system in a way they maybe hadn't thought, and then they actually build a tool around your innovation. That's pretty cool. Nice. Yeah. Well, what else? Anything else going on this week? I just wanted to throw out a random question at the end here. I know our team has grown a very large amount. I think we're at 30, as of today, maybe 36 employees Pilothouse is, which is actually, I think, almost double what it was going into quarantine. I just wanted to know, I guess Dave is the guy really to talk about hiring. He's been hammering that. But I know, Kyle, you've done so much with this new team that we have, or with a lot of the new team members, where you're spending twice a day, every day on the phone. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what it's been like growing the team to this size. And any insights you guys have about either growing the team or managing a new team at this size?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we can probably make it pretty quick for those who want to bounce. I got a meeting in 6 minutes. Okay. Also, just Andrew's been there side by side with me through all this, just to not put that credit forward. Yeah, we have a really interesting thing going. We're hiring experienced people at the top, or mid-level buyers specifically. But on the bottom, on the training side, we're hiring people either in university currently or fresh grads, right, fresh. So it's almost their first, real job. Not that this is a real job, this is a magic job. And what we're doing is we're looking for educated athletes with a great attitude and a humbleness to them. And we're telling them from the start, there's not an official 10 commandments, but here's the rules you need to kind of engage. And so it's really up to you to be a winner. And here's kind of what your trajectory looks like if you can build trust in us. And I'll give you everything that I know, and I'll support you, but you need to do the same. And as a result, the team is on fire. It's incredible. Yeah.
And just clarify, it's not just athletes. It's people who are team players and competitive. So have that mindset.
What we've found is that, you know, athletes are this way to hire people with, and not always, but with this innate competitiveness to them. And our industry it's competitive. And, you know, we want people on campaigns that, you know, won't let things, they don't want to let it lose. They want to win. And that's just as much of the driver as any other factor: compensation, work environment, all that kind of stuff.
Totally. Yeah. And it's been really tricky through COVID, right? Because it's like, how do you maintain a team culture? Like, I think we started our Pilothouse. We had 6 people, you know, 12 in office, 15 in office, 18 COVID. And then there's like, boom, double. But we've done a really good job maintaining that. And I don't know how sustainable it is without being, you know, back in office and working together, but whatever we are doing is working. And I think we're quite proud of the staff.
Yeah. And I just one thing to add there. I mean, I think a lot of people are probably going through, I think a lot of people went to work from home. They saw probably a big bump in productivity. Most people we talked to did. We definitely did. And then, you know, there's definitely moments where it starts to wane when people are getting sick of it. So we're working on that. It's definitely interesting. I mean, we've shifted to an online first model, remote first model, which doesn't mean that everyone can't be in the office, but it means that all communication has to center around Slack, around these Zoom calls, around email. Basically, there's no downside to being out of the office, which I think is so important to, you know, how we scale this thing.
Yeah.
Says the guy sitting on his porch there.
Yeah. Hygiene's another problem.
Lovely.
No downsides.
No downsides.
You need a shave, buddy.
No downsides. You also have no downsides by going to directtoconsumer.co right now and signing up for our once a week newsletter, which will certainly be all killer, no filler. There's no room for filler in that thing. We already have a really good subscriber base. I'm really happy with the organic launch, really happy with the way the team pulled the design and the web assets together, and the content I think is top notch as well. So go there right now, subscribe. And yeah, we'll see you at another all killer, no filler. Thanks for coming on today, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
See ya.